This submission is a sprawling conversational video script dissecting the failed internet comeback, financial desperation, and bizarre creative endeavors of a disgraced former content creator.
The raw, engaging passion in this piece is just, totally undeniable right out of the gate.
It really is, but to elevate the commentary, we are going to jump right into our critique using the lenses of structure and flow, completeness and focus, and angle and originality.
Yeah, let's dive straight in.
So a key theme running through this material seems to be the sheer, chaotic timeline of the subject's actions.
Oh, completely.
I mean, we're looking at TikTok failures, and then suddenly we're reading about this weird Stripe scam with someone named Hannah.
Right, for like $1,000 or something?
Yeah, exactly. And then we jump over to a 40-pound small claims court copyright battle with a creator named Drepsian. And then suddenly we're deep diving into AI-generated poetry.
Yeah, the poetry about like rubbing dirt on your face.
Yes, it's fascinating, but reading it currently feels like emptying a junk drawer onto a table all at once, rather than, deliberately presenting exhibits in a museum.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered how the underlying architecture shapes that feeling. The chronological mapping of this digital comeback attempt lacks a clear structural escalation.
Okay, I agree completely. Say more about that.
Well, the weakness is that the narrative currently bounces indiscriminately between different platforms and concepts.
Oh, for sure. 1 minute we're in TikTok irrelevance.
And then moving straight into financial desperation with the Stripe dispute, yeah.
Right, and then suddenly we're analyzing the Reaper Creek sci-fi book rewrite.
Exactly. And then back to the podcast, and then back to TikTok views again.
It's just exhausting for the audience to follow.
It really is. This circular structure dilutes the impact of the subject's rock-bottom status, because the tension resets with every single paragraph.
Wow, yeah, you're right. Every time the writer moves to a new section, we lose that momentum we just built.
Right. We're told he's desperate, but because the script immediately pivots back to like a low-stakes joke about a podcast quote, we never feel the cumulative heavy weight of that desperation.
Okay, so we know that's the weakness, so the suggestion is what, to fix the timeline?
The suggestion is to reorganize the script to follow a thematic downward descent that groups related behaviors together to build momentum.
I really like that phrasing, a downward descent. Instead of organizing by social media platform, you organize by his psychological unraveling.
Exactly. You want to deliberately guide the viewer down the staircase of this person's failure.
So what are some concrete examples for how to actually map that out? Because the writer has a ton of ground to cover.
For concrete examples, there are many ways to route this. But as an example, you could structure the essay in 3 distinct acts. Act 1 covers the public failures.
Okay, so that's where we group all the vanity metrics?
Right. The TikTok views, the Instagram comments, the podcast illusions. You establish the overarching reality first, which is that the world has moved on and nobody is listening.
Painting a picture of a man shouting into the void.
Yes, exactly. And once you've done that, Act 2 transitions into the financial desperation, driving those public failures.
Okay, so this is where you bring in the $1,000 Stripe scam with Hannah.
Yes, and that petty 40-pounds court battle with Rebzan.
I love how the stakes race naturally there. You establish the ego failing first, and then you show the wallet failing second.
Right, because a 40-pounds court battle sounds trivial on the surface. But when you place it after the total collapse of his public relevance, it suddenly looks incredibly desperate.
It recontextualizes the data. It's not just a petty lawsuit anymore. It's a guy fighting for literal scraps.
Precisely. And that perfectly sets up Act 3, which climaxes with the creative delusion.
So if the public rejects him and his finances are ruined, what's left?
Resorting to AI to rewrite the 2015 books and generate the bizarre poetry, you group all the Amazon reviews and the AI superpower videos here at the very end.
That creates such a narrative snowball effect. You move from embarrassing to financially dire to just psychologically absurd.
It really traps the viewer in the elevator with him as the cables snap.
That's a great way to put it. But that actually brings up an interesting challenge, because once we have those 3 acts structured, the focus within those acts really needs tightening.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Like, there are these massive asides in the text. I kept looking at this section discussing the podcast, where there's a very long joke about how people should be required to take, like, driving-style tests at the DMV before they buy a microphone.
Right, the podcast license tangent.
Yeah. And then there's a huge tangent about James Charles. I kept questioning if these tangents help the pacing by providing comic relief, or if they just totally hinder the momentum we just worked so hard to build.
Is the connection between A and B fully established in the material, or is that an area to potentially bolster?
I would argue it's not established at all. The driver's license bit goes on for a solid page, and it has nothing to do with the specific creator being analyzed.
I completely agree. Several extended analogies in the material dilute the core argument by pulling the audience too far away from the primary subject.
Yeah, pulling them completely out of the haunted house, so to speak.
Right. So the weakness here is that the script frequently relies on broad internet commentary to pad its runtime.
Like the podcast regulation joke.
Exactly. Or the generalizations about other uncanceled YouTubers. These tangents interrupt the flow and distract from the highly specific, genuinely fascinating absurdity of the subject's current situation.
Because the subject is already producing unbelievable content, right? Like he's rewriting childhood trauma using AI and fighting over $70 transactions.
Yes, when the writer steps away from this gold mine of specific weirdness to make a generic joke about how everyone has a podcast nowadays, it completely deflates the unique tension of the piece.
But I want to push back slightly here just for the sake of argument. Isn't part of the appeal of these video essay scripts the personality of the writer?
Sure, absolutely.
Like, if we are dragging the audience down this bleak, three-act staircase of a ruined life, doesn't a rant about podcast licenses inject some necessary levity? Doesn't it give the viewer a chance to breathe?
That is a fair point, and the writer's voice should definitely shine through, but levity shouldn't come at the cost of relevance.
Okay, fair enough.
So the suggestion is to trim generalized pop culture tangents and refocus all rhetorical analogies so they directly highlight the subject's unique behavioral patterns.
So we keep the writer's comedic voice, but tether it entirely to the subject matter.
Exactly. For concrete examples, instead of a long, distracting tangent about the DMV or driving licenses to mock the podcast, use an analogy rooted in the subject's own documented behavior.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
For instance, comparing the podcast's echo chamber, where he just talks to himself, to his habit of rewriting his own history in his book Falsely Accused.
Oh, wow. That is the exact same psychological mechanism, just on a different platform.
Right. And when mentioning other creators like James Charles, rather than a broad rant, explicitly contrast their situations. Point out the difference between profitable infamy, where cancellation actually drives revenue, with this subject's bankrupt obscurity.
Bankrupt obscure. That is such a potent phrase.
Because it zeroes in on what makes this specific story unique. Almost everyone who gets canceled on the internet bounces back in some lucrative way, but this subject didn't.
No, he really didn't. He just faded into a very weird, very broke obscurity. And that perfectly sets up the final piece of the puzzle.
Which is?
Well, the material makes a strong case for this detachment from reality by highlighting what the writer calls his AI psychosis.
Ah, yes. That phrase pops up repeatedly throughout the text.
It really does. The writer points out the AI-generated superhero thumbnails, the use of ChatGPT to rewrite the Reaper Creek Sci-Fi book, and of course those weird poems of Onision's pain.
Right, the AI-generated rhyming poetry.
Yeah, but I have to admit some confusion as I read through the notes. Is relying on AI just a lazy insult here? It feels like the writer is constantly pointing at the screen and saying, look how fake and cheap this is.
Right, it's treated as a punchline.
Exactly. But I sense there is a much deeper psychological point that the text is almost grasping, but just missing. Like the writer's discovered fire, but is only using it to warm their hands instead of powering an engine.
Suspicion regarding artificial intelligence generation remains an underutilized thematic tool.
Underutilized because it's just a surface-level observation right now.
Yes, the weakness is that the script repeatedly brings up AI as a casual insult. The writer mocks the AI superhero videos, scoffs at the ChatGPT poetry, and treats these instances as disconnected jokes.
Yeah, rather than synthesizing them into a real theory.
Exactly. Stopping at "this image has 6 fingers" means missing the entire psychological motivation behind the action.
Because the job of a compelling video essay isn't just to point out that a thumbnail is fake. The job is to explain why a disgraced creator with a historically massive ego would suddenly surrender his own autobiography to a machine.
Yes, precisely. So the suggestion is to elevate the AI usage from a passing insult to the core psychological thesis of the script, presenting it as the tragic necessity of a man who has alienated all real human connection.
Wait, really? That is incredibly dark.
It is. It takes the tone from simple mockery to a sort of psychological horror.
It really does. So what are the concrete examples of how a writer would actually implement that thesis?
As a concrete example, you could tie the AI usage directly to the financial sections we established in Act 2.
Okay, so bridging the lack of money with the use of AI.
Explicitly argue that because he can no longer afford an editor, which he actually admits in his own Amazon book description, or human collaborators, and because his real-life audience has completely vanished, he is forced to use AI to manufacture his own reality.
Oh man, that is haunting.
You could frame the AI poetry and the AI therapy he reportedly seeks out as the ultimate proof that a machine is the only entity left on Earth willing to validate him.
He's a man who burned every bridge with human beings, and now he's just sitting alone in a room, typing desperate prompts into a large language model just to have something agree with him.
Right. Think about the poetry quotes included in the text, the strange algorithmic verses about severed limbs and phantom gears.
Yeah, initially the writer just mocks them for being poorly written.
But as we apply this new thesis, those poems become a metaphor for his entire existence on the modern internet. He is experiencing the phantom limb syndrome of his own fame.
Oh, wow. The phantom limb of fame. That is a phenomenal connection. He's an amputee of the attention economy.
Exactly. He still feels the fame. He remembers the millions of viewers and the constant feedback loop. But when he reaches out for it now, it's just empty space.
And because no human will hold his hand, he forces an AI to write a poem about that phantom feeling.
Yes, when the script frames the AI usage this way, it stops being a tired joke about cheap thumbnails. It becomes a chilling portrait of the internet's most isolated creator.
And think about how that changes the voiceover delivery for the video essay. It's no longer snarky. It becomes deeply analytical and somber.
And it loops perfectly back to the financial reality. The fact that his videos are funded by mysterious people like Hannah, who then do chargebacks on Stripe, leaving him $1,000 in the hole.
Right. He can't even trust his remaining human audience not to actively scam him.
The machines are literally the only safe space he has left. He can command an AI to tell him he is a superhero, and the AI won't issue a chargeback.
That makes the audience feel this complex mixture of pity, horror, and fascination, rather than just simple amusement.
And that is the hallmark of a truly original angle. It pushes past the easy dunk.
It really is a masterclass in taking raw data and forging it into a narrative weapon. So just to recap the main points of the critique here for the writer.
Yeah, let's summarize it.
The raw material is highly engaging and effectively captures a deeply bizarre internet phenomenon, but it requires targeted editorial.
Absolutely.
Our 3 actionable suggestions for the listener to implement are, first, reorganize the narrative into a thematic descent from public failure to private delusion.
Right. Group the themes together.
Second, trim generalized tangents to keep the focus strictly on the subject's absurdities.
Keep it inside the haunted house.
Exactly. And third, weaponize the AI observations into a profound central thesis about isolation.
I think those structural and thematic changes will completely transform the script.
Definitely. We invite the listener to apply these structural and thematic changes and submit their revised script back to us for another critique. Keep writing, because if we leave all these strange digital artifacts scattered randomly on the floor, they are just junk.
But when we organize them, they become a perfectly preserved monument to the internet's most solitary ghost.
Beautifully said. We look forward to reading the next iteration.